welcome back to Navalier Market Buzz, episode 34. I'm Crystal Navalier, and I'm joined again this week with my father, Louis Navalier. Dad, let's talk about Eli Lilly. It recently soared.
Yeah, it had a very favorable trial for the pill version of its GLP-1 drug, and Eli Lilly continues to capture more market share from Novo Nordisk on GLP-1. So I sold Novo Nordisk several months ago, and I basically increased my bet on Eli Lilly. So that's my bet, and I'm glad it's paying off.
And then what about Trump canceling the Nvidia chip sales to China?
Well, Nvidia is going to have a $5.5 billion write-down, but those chips were never really very profitable anyway. So now Nvidia's margins will expand. They'll go put their money where things are more profitable. That whole Nvidia China sales has been a mess. The Biden administration has made them modify their chips twice. The first chip was interesting because it had the same processor as the chips we get in America, but they had a slower bus. Bus is like the rate of data transfer. Mm-hmm. And then they made other modifications to it, and I think the whole thing's ridiculous, to be honest with you. I mean, China's going to get the chips through Singapore or some other place. But hopefully this Chinese Trump tit for tat reciprocal tariff thing is going to get resolved, because Boeing just had 10 airplanes headed to 3 airlines in China that got canceled. So those are brand new planes, custom ordered. So things are getting to be a little crazy. So hopefully cooler heads will prevail.
Now the Fed's Beige book comes out on Wednesday. What do you expect?
Well, I just want to see what the regions are. Okay, I want to see of the 12 Fed districts, how many are under duress. The Fed should be cutting rates in May, but they keep saying they're waiting for inflation from the tariffs, but we've just had 2 months of deflation on the CPI and a massive drop in wholesale prices, and we got the lowest oil prices in 4 years. So, the Fed, instead of watching the economic data, is making up a narrative that may not come to fruition. Mm-hmm. Because what's going to happen is all the trade barriers should be falling with 130 nations, and this should not be inflationary, although we do have a 10% tariff across the board.
And then what about the durable goods on Thursday?
That should be very good. I mean, retail sales are super strong. Auto sales soared in March, and then also it looks like auto production's still pretty hot and heavy. They were trying to beat the tariffs to a certain degree, but we expect very good durable good orders.
Now, can you talk a little bit about the Atlanta Fed and what it means for GDP growth? You recently said that we might not be in a recession anymore.
Well, yeah, they're forecasting negative 2.2% last I looked. If you back out the dumping of gold in America, because at COMEX, which is a big gold reserve, their inventory went up 41% in January, 25% in February. I don't have the March number yet. But if we back out gold, they're only a tenth of a percent. So gold is a minus 2.1% drag on the Atlanta Fed's GDP estimate. And they were dumping of other goods. But yeah, based on the retail sales and other positive news we're getting, I don't expect a recession. And of course, last week, the earnings season kicked off phenomenal. Netflix beat, provided great guidance. Taiwan Semi said their order backlog's great. They beat. They're not worried about tariffs. This tariff narrative is coming mostly from Europe, mm-hmm. and we're being blamed for a lot of the world's problems. And I've also noticed, at least in Britain, they're cheering for China right now. So, obviously they don't like President Trump, so they're picking sides. So, I just think that we just got to get back to business, and the things will be fine. But the economic data has been stunning.
Now, Powell was talking about the tariffs causing inflation, but the consumer price index has been in a decline for the past 2 months. How does that make sense?
Well, this is why our Fed chairman isn't an economist, because he's clueless. I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but Trump is right. He better hurry up and cut rates. I mean, the European Central Bank just cut rates for the 7th time. I think they got another 3 rate cuts coming. After successful Treasury auctions on bonds, our rates are settling back down. The Fed should never fight market rates, but they're looking at a fantasy target that's not real. And that's why that Beige Book survey is so important. I want to see how many regions are hurting. And Trump, when he was with Prime Minister Maloney on I think it was Thursday, he was starting to complain that Powell's playing politics, and the Fed's supposed to be independent, not play politics. But if they just looked at the economic data, we wouldn't have these problems.
Why didn't the Bank of Canada cut rates last week? Aren't they in a recession?
They should have cut rates, but obviously there's an election on April 28th, and sometimes central banks don't want to influence the elections. But the 2 leading candidates are still pro net zero, and there's not a lot of difference, to be honest with you. I know Alberta and Saskatchewan are very upset because under net zero, obviously you shut down the fossil fuels in Alberta and the chemical fertilizer that comes from Saskatchewan, and there's a lot of potash in Saskatchewan. So, but I guess they don't want to influence the election, but I don't know, neither candidate seems to be that different, to be honest with you. So let's just get the election over with, and hopefully they can start cutting rates and stimulating their economy.
Now let's talk about some big earning announcements this week. Before I start though, why did ASML guide lower when TSM beat and guided higher?
Well, first of all, ASML is the fancy lithography company in the Netherlands, and they're the ones that use lasers to etch the chips. By the way, those lasers use neon, okay? And that's one of the reasons we need the Ukraine-Russia war to end, because guess who makes all the neon between those 2 countries? Both of them do. But their ASML is a semiconductor equipment company. TSM actually makes the chips, okay? And of course they're onshoring a lot in America. So right now we're on Apple laptops. Those chips are made by TSM, and they will be made in Arizona soon. Same thing with the Microsoft Surface laptops. They're using TSM chips. And so, yeah, TSM's business is booming. So it set a very good tone for the semiconductor industry.
Now, what do you expect for Tesla?
Oh, well, it's up to Elon. How do I say this in a nice way? Their sales are forecasted to go up 1.2%, but their earnings are forecasted to decline 4.3%. The analysts have cut in the past month. They have a very erratic earnings surprise history. So the new Model Y is a very, very nice car. It has a light bar across the front to kind of match the Cybertruck theme. They have pulled people off the assembly line on the Cybertrucks, and there's huge incentives to move the Cybertrucks now. So that whatever million deposits they had, apparently they decided not to buy the truck. So that's very sad. But their energy storage business should be booming, especially the commercial storage business. We had those horrific fires in Moss Landing, which is the Monterey area. The battery backup system burned for a month. When we're visiting Grandma in San Diego, we get reports of these little fires from the battery facilities in Escondido and other places. So we really got to upgrade the battery storage and get rid of the lithium ion and use iron phosphate. And Tesla is an expert in that. Those batteries do come from China, but that's who dominates it. So that might become a problem longer term. But he's got to also focus on FSD, his self-driving system, which a lot of people are adopting. They love it. And then finally, he's got to talk a lot about that robotaxi, okay? We need to see those things out and about, competing with Waymo. He did this incredible production at Universal Studios, and it was just basically a sci-fi movie. It painted a picture of what's happening. And now Elon's got to fulfill that, okay? And then my final comment about Tesla, that his robots are cute, when they make drinks or serve you hors d'oeuvres. but I don't think they're home ready yet. Okay, so I hope he doesn't talk too much about those because those are probably a decade off.
So then, do you think that there's an opportunity for the robots to take over the world?
Eventually, yeah. That's the whole point of AI. AI makes all our decisions, and then we don't have to think anymore. But AI is only as good as the data you put into it, and I don't like some of the AI programs because I call them garbage in, garbage out. I think we see that on our intelligence community. They missed 9/11, they missed October 7th. I like AI programs to look at more correlated things. And so there's a way to clean up the data. I think there, we have a friend, Paul, who is building AI chips in Boise. He's an ex-Micron engineer, and his firm's called Natural Intelligence, and he basically builds AI based on clean data. But his AI is mostly making like a smart Alexa and things like that. I mean, when you open up the fridge, let's say you open the fridge at 5 o'clock every day and have a beer. Your fridge will start telling you, hi, you want a beer?
Yeah.
Or if your food goes bad, they'll tell you. So all our devices have Wi-Fi now, and they're invading our homes, and that's kind of the AI of the future. But it's no different than our pets. Our pets plot against us and figure us out, and we have, just so everybody knows, we have a 17-year-old Yorkie dog. He's getting a little dingy, and last night he was barking at a chair, thinking your mom was there, and your mom was in another room on the other end of the house. So he's just like the dog can be misprogrammed. The AI can get a little confused too. But in the end, the first wave of AI will be figuring us out in our households and trying to organize us, but they will be plotting against us, rightly or wrongly.
So now, what do you expect for Lockheed Martin?
Well, the F-35 Lightning is a very exciting plane, but it's always being fixed. We'll see. I mean, I think defense stocks are up because there's a lot of tension between us and Iran. Obviously, Trump doesn't want to strike, but he's put a bunch of B-2 bombers in Diego Garcia. That's the military base in the Indian Ocean, and they've been using those the B-2s on the Houthis. If we have to drop bunker buster bombs, because the nuclear stuff's down in these caverns, you have to use the B-2. But so that is temporarily helping Lockheed. Their sales are forecasted to go up about 3.6. Earnings are supposed to decline 0.3%. They do have a good earnings surprise history, but the whole Defense Department's being cleaned up right now.
Now, what do you expect for Boeing?
Well, the good news for Boeing is they got the F-47 fighter contract. This is a fascinating airplane. I think it has the little wings up front by the cockpit, canards, I think, but it has no rudder in the back, So it's very different. And they are flying around, but they fly so fast no one can get a handle on them. And of course, they were named after Donald Trump. That's why they're called the F-47. So that was interesting. But Boeing's commercial business is still struggling. The good news, their sales are forecasted to be up 19.9%, but their earnings are forecasted to decline 13.4%. They have a horrible earnings surprise history. Obviously, what happened with China canceling orders is not good for them. I'm sure they'll be able to figure those planes for other customers. But in the end, China should be buying Boeing planes, and hopefully we'll get all this resolved soon. But I'm not excited about Boeing at all.
And what do you expect for ServiceNow?
Well, that is an interesting company. Their sales are forecasted to rise 18.6%. Their earnings are supposed to go up 12.5%. So anytime earnings aren't growing as fast as sales, margins are kind of under compression. But they do have a good surprise history, and they do make us more efficient. I think you're showing an example of ServiceNow software. So there is some hope.
And I'm scared a little bit to ask you about Intel. Will the first quarter announcement be bad?
Horrific. Their sales are forecasted to decline 3.3%. Earnings are forecasted to plunge 97.7%. They have a really scary earnings surprise history. That Intel plant never got built in Ohio. Biden was pushing that, and he did succeed in getting TSM to put the plant in Arizona. But the reason the Intel plant never got built in Ohio is the Defense Department reneged on a $2.5 billion commitment for semiconductor chips. So Intel has just been adrift ever since it didn't have an engineer in charge. Everybody started to private label their chips, they're obviously making gaming chips and stuff, but they can't compete with Nvidia. So I feel sorry for Intel. It's a great company that's been grossly mismanaged.
And finally, what do you expect for Google?
Well, their sales are forecasted to go up 10.7%, and earnings are forecasted to grow 7%. Google does not provide any guidance whatsoever, but it has a very good earnings surprise history. I think where everybody's going to be looking at their advertising revenue very carefully. Netflix, one of the reasons they beat, they're now getting in the advertising business. You can pay less for Netflix if you want to watch ads. And based on the strong retail sales we had in March, the strongest in 2 years, I would think Google's advertising revenue would pick up. The only glitch is, of course, the Department of Justice has won a suit against them to break them up. And, this is... Breaking up Google is kind of like a dog catching a car. I mean, what does the dog do now? Okay. And they're trying to appease the government, and I'm sure with Trump in it, it's going to be a little different. But I think they're trying to spin off Chrome and their search engine. So we'll see what happens. But Google normally beats.
And one more bonus one. What do you expect for AbbVie?
Well, their sales are forecasted to go up 4.9%. Earnings are forecasted to grow 5.7%. There's some minor analyst cuts, but ABBV is a symbol. They have a great earnings surprise history. This particular stock is in a lot of our dividend accounts. It's a fairly safe stock, but when the drug companies get a powerful pipeline going, it's a wonderful thing. And so let's just hope they continue to beat and grow steadily.
Okay, Dad, now here's the fun part. Let's answer some subscriber questions. We're getting all these questions about tariffs. Can you try and clarify things a little bit?
Sure. You're showing a chart of tariffs historically in America. And you can see, well, before we had income taxes, I think income taxes started in 1917, I believe. Most of our revenue came from tariffs, and then as free trade was promoted, the tariffs actually collapsed, and they are next to nothing now. To be candid with you, I know Trump likes to brag about the tariffs on China and stuff, but this is what Howard Lutnick is talking about. Gee, if we just go back to tariffs, we don't have to have an income tax, but we're not going to get there. So what's going to happen is we're going to have freer trade because of the 131 countries that we're negotiating with. It looks like they're going to drop their trade barriers, so we're going to have freer trade. And then, of course, the Trump administration is guilting them to buy something American, LNG or agriculture products, things like that. One of the fascinating things is, as big as we are agriculturally, we've been in a net deficit for the past 3 years. A lot of it's Mexico. We get tomatoes, berries, chili, obviously avocados from Mexico. And they just slammed I think almost a 21% tariff on tomatoes. So I find that to be very interesting. But there is a 10% tariff across the board, and that is meant to, for lack of a better word, tax our underground economy. If you have a cash economy in America, which we do, for a lot of people, you have to put on a VAT tax, a national sales tax, or the 10% tariffs. So Trump has decided to start to tax that underground economy with a broad-based tariff, and we're hoping the dollar gets its mojo back, and the dollar gets so strong we won't even notice that. But none of this is showing up in the data. So the irony is we're going to have freer trade because of the tariffs. Obviously, China's a wild card, and until Trump and Xi finally get together, it's going to be a distraction.
Now, another one of our subscribers wanted to know if Trump is going to fill up the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
Sure, when we have extra money, obviously we have to pass a tax cut and do what they call reconciliation, and he can't do that until there's surplus money. But that's a good idea, for national security. Biden drained it, mostly going into elections. He's trying to lower oil prices by draining the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The other thing is when they do this tax cut, they have to reconcile, and there's even rumblings that because of the no tax on Social Security, no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, that under reconciliation they may actually have to increase the tax bracket. And I think the reason Trump would be willing to do that is he likes to take away the other side's argument that you're helping the billionaires and stuff. So don't be surprised if we get a higher tax bracket, because Trump's all about the masses and whoever he promised cuts to. But no SPR fill up until we resolve the tax the tax rate and do a budget.
And finally, is it true that they're going to address a sovereign wealth fund?
I don't really think that's going to be a high priority. Also, something interesting happened last week. So on Wednesday, May 9th, Trump had his tweet in Truth Social to buy, and it was all in caps, exclamation, 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 before the market opened. Mm-hmm. And of course, that was the biggest rally I'll probably ever see in my lifetime, and the market's since trying to back and fill a bit. But then a week later, Devin Nunes, who runs Truth Social, announces that Trump is now in the money management business. Mm-hmm. You can open up Trump-inspired accounts at Charles Schwab through a sub-advisor. And they will be, having Make America Energy Independent. They're all Trump themes, So now he's a money manager. So on Truth Social, and Truth Social is going to be doing it. And Truth Social is the one that had the big tweet to inspire the rally. So I guess they're going to have disclosures on their tweets, because I guess he wants the market to go higher. He just is in the money management business. But the other interesting thing that happened on Wednesday is his family, which is Eric and Don Jr. and Eric's wife, took a big interest in Salem Media, and the stock I think shot up 270 some odd %. And I met with the CEO of Salem a few years ago, and this company does mostly religious right radio around the country, but they also own Eagle Publishing, which is a newsletter firm that I'm intimately familiar with. Brian Perry, who's our dividend expert, writes for Salem. I speak at Freedom Fest in June. That's Mark Skousen. He works for Salem and Eagle Publishing. So it's going to be interesting because, again, a week later after inspiring this big stock market rally, all of a sudden Trump and his family are not only in the managed account business, but in the investment newsletter business. Mm-hmm. So I think they got to be careful if they do a sovereign wealth fund. They got a lot of conflicts. You can do it with disclosure, but I think they might want to go a little slow on creating that sovereign wealth fund.
Well, thank you so much for answering all my questions, and thank you to you all again for watching and supporting us. If you enjoyed, make sure to give us a like and subscribe. If you want to purchase Louie's book, it'll be in the description below. Also, if you prefer listening to us on Spotify, that link will also be in the description below. But until then, we'll see you next week, and happy Easter, everyone.